want to introduce you to the Phoenix Basic. It's our lowest price, most affordable roaster that roasts from 4 ounces to up to 3 pounds. It's really a great deal. If you pre-order one right now, they're $39.99. When you get one, the setup is really super easy. Everything's assembled except for the fan, which will be in a box. And so you put that fan on top. You can bolt it down if you'd like. Just remember that from time to time you are going to have to lift it and clean underneath of it. But after you do that, it comes with a clamp. You just clamp on the temporary piping. Eventually you'll want to use permanent piping. And then hook it up to your heat source and plug it in. On the gas units, we provide a free voltage regulator so you can run it on any 110 line. On the electric, it's a dedicated 220 30 amp breaker. And of course, if you are using gas, you'll either hook it into natural gas, if that's the product that you ordered, or you'll hook it into LPG propane. The Phoenix Basic will sample roast as small as 4 ounces, and it will roast a maximum of 3 pounds per roast. Today we're just going to roast 2 pounds of Costa Rican honey, just to give you an idea how easy they are to use. But this is an awesome home roaster. It's an awesome roaster for a small business. You can get 4 to 5 roasts per hour out of the gas models. And even the electric models are very powerful for an electric model compared to some others. You can get a good 4 roasts per hour out of those. So we're going to go ahead and start it up. We're going to run you through the process and of the preheat, and then we're going to actually do a roast with you. Just a word on the LPG or propane models. You can get one of our professionally crimped gas lines and an 11 water column regulator with that, and with it comes the professional connector here, and it comes like this attached to the propane regulator. Some people get a little confused on how to install one of these because they're used to those little cheap plastic pull ones, and they try to install it like this. Basically, you just push the unit forward, turn it counterclockwise into the tank, and hand tighten it nice and tight. And it does have a rubber gasket, so it does seal, and so you won't need to tighten it, over tighten it, and then you'll be good to go. So to get things going, I've already turned on the power on the back. Now I hit the operation button, which turns on the fan. I want my airspeed between 10 and 20 on the manual dial damper. On roasters that have the electronic airflow, such as the BC models, you may need to go higher, up to 30 to get that to kick on. But the manual dial damper systems are very precise. So now I'm ready to kick on the igniter. I hit the start button, and I make sure I got my gas turned up. And in about 5 seconds, it starts to trip on. And as you can see, it's already lit up. The light button is on. In a minute, I'll show you the flame. And you'll see now we can go through the preheat process. In these machines, none of the Oros do you want to go past 3 on the setup. The nice thing about the one with the, with the regulator that comes with, or that you can buy with the Phoenix Basic, and all the way up to the Phoenix 5 if you want. You can buy the 11 water column regulator. For bigger roasters such as the Oro 8 and other roasters such as BC, we recommend you go with the Pro Marshal, which allows the KPA to go much higher. So it's preheating now. As you can see, we're starting to see some, well, we're not seeing much temperature change because silly old me had the drum door open. But now that I've closed the drum door, you can see the bean temperature, the roasting temperature, the drum temperature, if you want to call it, is trying to catch up with the airflow temperature. So we're going to let that preheat, and then we're going to do a roast. The model we're using today is a propane or LPG model, and you can quickly tell when you get one because the propane model will have a gas gauge that goes from 0 to 6 kPa. You never want to go past 3 kPa when you're roasting with any of our Oro roasters or Phoenix roasters. On the natural gas one, the gauge only goes up to 2.5, since most natural gas stays between 1.5 kPa max. A lot of roasts are done below that, since natural gas is a lower pressure gas. So just to get started, once you have it all plugged in to either a 220 line or to your 110 converter, there's the switches on the back, which also serves as a circuit breaker. You click that on, and what starts up is the fan for the cooling of the electronics, as well as the timer and the other controls. These are not the Fuji controls like what's on our Oros, but they're still nice controls. And the cool thing about it is, compared to some other roasters, is you not only get the bean temperature, but you get the air temperature as well. Now in the 2017 models, we're making available an option that if you down the road want to add a fidget to it, there'll be pre-drilled holes for two in the neck of the roaster, and then in the front plate for a bean and ET that can be ran through a fidget, and for profiling. But generally speaking, if you're wanting a system that does profiling, you'll want to go with our high-end Fuji components and the built-in a data logging system or computer profiling system, which works through Artisan, and down the road may also work with other programs such as Roastmaster, Cropster, and so forth. But anyway, once you turn that on, the next button you would hit would be the operation button, and when you hit the operation button, immediately your drum starts turning and your fan comes on. And the reason why the fan comes on is because you have precise manual control with the manual dial damper system, and for gas units you want to start it between 10 and 20%. So let's go ahead and start it up. It's going to get a little noisy here. As you can see, it's a bit noisy. Part of the reason for that is I don't have this hooked up to a line to take it out, which we'll do in a moment. But then from there, after you start that, you would naturally make sure your gas is turned on at the tank if it's a propane model. And then you hit the start button, and there's about a 5-second delay, and then you'll turn up your gas, and you'll see right here it's kicked on. It's now at about 2.5 kPa. When the light is on right here, it means the flame is going. You can also view it through the window there. Flame going with our unique custom burner system. While this is heating up, I'll just tell you a couple features about the Basic, because basically the Basic has almost all the same features as the Oro, except for it doesn't have the high-end Fuji components. It doesn't do computer profiling. It also does not have the option of putting a drum speed control on it. And you also are limited on color options. The body can be either red or black, but the stainless steel will always be the silver stainless steel. But other than that, if you're wanting a great roaster where you don't concern yourself too much with profiling, rather you are the artist, this is a great machine. Another thing too is it has all the other things, such as the little light for viewing, has a really nice trier spoon, and it's just a very well built machine. I did forget to mention one other thing. When you first start your preheat, it's a good idea to time it. Preheating on a gas roaster will range from maybe 5 minutes all the way up to perhaps 10 or more minutes based on your ambient temperature outside. Obviously, if it's colder in your shop that you're roasting, it's going to take longer. Now, electric does take longer. It may take up to 15 minutes to preheat, so don't worry about that. And on the electric as well, you don't need to turn the control past about 3.5 or so for roasting or even preheating. So we're getting close to the temperature that I like to use for charging, which for me is right around 350. A lot of people charge their beans or drop them into the drum anywhere from as low as 320 up to 400, some even beyond 400. I'm not brave enough to go beyond 400. I also don't want to risk the damage to the beans. But the beauty of the Basic, as well as all the Oros, is it's a double-walled drum, so you got that protection there. Now keep in mind that the first roast is never going to be as accurate as your second, third, and fourth, because even though this is telling me the temperature of the drum is 375, the metals really aren't 375. The heat running through it are, whereas on your second roast it'll be much more accurate. As you might notice, I'm allowing this to preheat up to 400, which will help for the first roast to get the temperature more closer to 350 on the metals. And then at this point, if I want to, I can charge the beans, or I can hit the stop button, which automatically turns off the gas. And you'll notice the temperature quickly dropping as the airflow is still blowing air through there, which is now cooler air. But now that I got it down to where I basically want it, I'm going to kick it on again, let it jump back up a little bit, and it's getting ready to start. It's now started. And I'm going to let it go up to 350, which is about it. Now what I'm going to do is reset the timer. On the timer, there's two ways to reset it. You can turn it off and then turn it back on, or you can press the reset button. So I'm going to go ahead and charge the beans now. Got the drum door closed. I'm doing 2 pounds of Costa Rican honey. Make sure all those beans get down in there. Now I shut the hopper door so we don't let air out that way. And now what you're going to see is the temperature rapidly drop, even though it was at 350 or above. Over the next minute to 2 minutes, you will see a rapid drop in the temperature, sometimes well over 200 degrees. And if you have a lot of airflow running through that, it could drop even farther than that. But generally speaking, it will bottom out and then start climbing after in less than a minute and a half. As you can see, it's bottomed out here. Now it's starting to climb, and it's less than a minute. I have a feeling that because I'm running 2 pounds of beans and not 3 pounds, I really don't need my setting up to 3 kPa. So I'm going to bump it down right now to about 2.5, and then I'm going to monitor how rapidly it climbs. If it climbs up to 300 really fast, I'll know that I've probably got the gas up a little too high and I can adjust it. Because generally speaking, you want a nice, even roast that ranges in that time range of 9 to 14 minutes. Everybody has different ideas and different artistic ways of developing their coffee, so I'm not going to get into any of that because that's part of your creativity. I'm just going to show you the basics on roasting. So at this point, we still have a nice even climb. We're at bean temperature 206. Every once in a while you'll hear the beans as they're tipping, perhaps hitting the trier spoon, but not to worry. And so we're watching a nice even climb at only 2 minutes, 5 seconds. We're at 218 degrees. So we're going to let that climb, and I'm going to stay at 2.5 kPa, and I'm going to leave my hot air at about 15%. As your roast begins to develop, you're going to be focusing more on the looks of the bean and even looking at the trier spoon. But basically for the first several minutes of your roast, the first few minutes, most of your heat is coming from conduction, the heat of the burners touching the outer part of the drum and then going to the inner part of the drum and mass heating mass, and then that mass of the drum heating the beans, and the beans actually continuing to heat one another. But after a couple of minutes, the airflow is going to be a big source of your heat. So right now we're at 3 minutes 41 seconds. My bean temperature is 280 degrees. My air temperature is actually a little lower, 279. So I can actually bump up my airflow if I want, because now that we're getting into 4 minutes, you can pretty much expect that the hot air running through the drum is going to continue to heat your beans. And you can still see we're going through the drying phase. Generally at about 335 degrees or so, you start to go through the mallard or the browning phase. You don't want that drying phase to dry too fast. That's one reason why you keep the airflow low rather than blasting air through it, like a lot of fluid bed roasters do. You want to keep that moisture in there and have it slowly evaporating and being pulled out of the drum so as to enhance the flavor of the roast. And so that's continuing to rise. We're at 310 on the bean, 293 on the hot air, and we're at 4 minutes and 47 seconds. I've bumped up my airflow to 2.5 minutes. But as you can see, we're finishing the drying phase. We're getting close to where we'll be starting the mallard phase or the browning phase at about 10 or so degrees. You can actually see that green and yellowish beginning to turn a little bit of light brown. Now keep in mind this was Costa Rican honey, so it had a little bit of a brownish tint to it anyway when we put it in there. So now we're at 5.5 minutes, and we're right going into the mallard phase. We're at 331 degrees on the bean temperature. And I'm actually going to bump up my airflow to 3. And I'm going to start looking at my roast a little more. And if I notice a lot of chaff in there, which I don't, I may choose to bump up the airflow a little bit. Generally speaking, on the basic as well as the Oros, you don't need to go past about 5 on your airflow. And you'll notice that if you turn it past 5, that the airflow will not rise as rapidly, generally speaking. We're still at 2.5 kPa, 6 minutes, 12 seconds, 349 degrees. It's a pretty slow climb at this point, not as fast as some people may like it, but I like it about where it's going. And keep in mind, because it's the first roast, the timing will not be the same as second and consecutive roasts thereafter. Just to give you an overview of the roaster, of course this is the airflow control. This is the debris tray. If a little bit of debris gets between the front plate and the drum, because you have to leave a little bit of opening, you'll check that and clean that regularly. Believe it or not, we're at 374 on the roasting or the bean temperature, and we're starting to go into first crack. So I'm going to bring it over here so you can monitor this. We have a lot of light on this, so you may not be able to tell exactly the coloration of the beans, but they're at a light brown right now. We're at 7 minutes, 52 seconds. We're at 385 degrees, and the airflow is actually lower at 339 degrees. But we're starting to go into a nice first crack. Within a couple of minutes, our roast should be done. But it's still at the beginning stages, and I don't know if you can hear it very well. It's not a real loud crack. It's more like a snap, crackle, pop on this roast. I'm hoping I got the lighting a little better on the camera so you can see it. We're at almost 9.5 minutes. I'm cutting back the gas because we're now at about 426, 427, which is pretty close to the point I want to drop these. They're actually going into second crack, so I'm cutting off the gas by hitting the stop button. I now hit the cooling button, and then I'm going to drop them in the cooling tray. And an interesting feature about the Basic, and I'll tell you in a minute, is it shares the... You're going to see a little smoke because I haven't bumped open the There, now I'm bumping open the, you may have noticed all of a sudden that smoke disappeared. And that's because I bumped open the airflow. You can bump open the airflow on the cooling tray before you drop the beans, unlike what I did. But make sure if you do that, you close off the chaff unit. There's a valve on the chaff unit so that it doesn't begin, because the power of the fan increases dramatically and you don't want the fan to pull up the chaff from the bottom of the chaff and start shooting it through your exhaust pipe. So there we are. We did, in just a little over 10 minutes, we did a full City Plus roast, a little darker than I usually go on Costa Rican. But you'll see within 2 or 3 minutes that will be cool. At this point, you can close the drum door. Actually, a minute ago I could have closed it, and kick back on the gas. And then as soon as it goes up to your charge point, which only takes a few seconds, right now it's quickly almost up to 350, you could charge another roast. So you can do continuous roasting. The only thing you need to remember is to clean your chaff unit out from time to time every few roasts. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. I don't know how well you can see that control there. I've got the valve closed now so that while I'm doing the cooling, I don't pull any chaff out of the drawer there while I'm doing the increased cooling with the cooling tray on the beans. At this point, with that door closed, you can actually continue roasting, and you can empty your chaff unit and get rid of the chaff without it blowing all over the place. If you try doing that when the valve's open there, you're going to have a problem because chaff's going to be blowing everywhere. So as soon as your cooling tray is done, you can put that cooling tray valve back in, which I'll show you in a minute, and then you can pop this back open so that the chaff will continue to fall into the cooling tray. I'm sorry, the chaff unit tray. Okay, this is actually the control for the cooling tray. When it's pulled out, your fan motor on the exhaust picks up more speed, and it allows the beans to cool. Since my beans have already cooled, I'm kicking it back in, so now the full use of the fan at a reduced speed is being used for the chaff unit. As you may remember, I said that I had closed the valve on the chaff unit. So now that I've turned off the cooling tray, I can flick that back open so that the roast that's currently going on will allow the chaff to drop in there. And of course, all that process you do within 1 or 2 or 3 minutes as the beans cool down, and then you're ready to go. So there's a look at the beans, 2 pounds of Costa Rican, full City Plus, a little darker than I usually go on Costa Rican, but it'll still be a really nice roast, and that was done in right around 10 minutes. So at that rate, if you continue to drop, you could do over 5 roasts an hour, which is pretty impressive for a little machine at the entry price of $39.99 if you pre-order one. Normally $44.99.